right, it's time to talk about the New York Jets. Used to be, I guess this is still Jets FM on EOFN, even though these are random opportunities on the Arlads Football Network to go around the NFL and talk about NFL training camp and the New York Jets. I mean, I guess this would be the first one that I should post, Jan, because the Jets are starting, I believe, before anybody else. Do they start at the same? They start at the earliest possible day than anybody else, correct?
Yeah, I think they're like a week earlier than a lot of teams, just because they're playing in the Hall of Fame game. Us again with I think they're playing the Browns, if I remember correctly, and clearly that's because we have two major members of the organization who one finally made it into the Hall of Fame, and one was pretty much a dead solid lock to make the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility with Joe Klecko and Darrelle Revis.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched a Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony, so looking forward to it. Is this like? I mean, are they going to make up Joe Klecko and Darrelle Revis?
I think they have already.
Have
I think the hatchet was buried already. Although the latest little salvos were between Sauce Gardner and Asante Samuel, and Darrelle Revis got on board, and supposedly there was a lot of swirl associated with it, even behind the scenes on Twitter threads, with a lot of conversation ongoing. I guess Samuel was talking about how that Gardner needed to have more picks, and he was talking about Revis needing to have more picks, and it just went viral from there. And Revis kind of nicely pointed out is they didn't throw to my side of the field because I pretty much locked everybody down. So it got a little testy there for a little bit a couple of days ago, with a little Twitter salvos going back and forth between them, and supposedly with a couple other defensive backs weighing in as well.
Okay, very nice. This all begins when? When's the Hall of Fame?
I think the Jets open camp. I think is it the 19th, if I remember correctly?
I think they open camp the 19th, and then what? Hall of Fame is
like a week and a half later. I think like a week and a half, 2 weeks. I'll take a look. I don't know off the top of my head because I haven't paid an enormous amount of attention as to when the game is.
It happens pretty soon.
To me, I mean, honestly, I think we both agree the results in that game, given this shortened camp, don't mean a whole heck of a lot.
No, nobody cares about results.
Don't get anybody hurt. I mean, that's kind of what I think.
Yes,
we all view right now. A lot of times, there are clearly a couple of interesting battles, and I think we both probably agree that the offensive line and how that's going to be configured and constituted, and who gets certain roles, is probably the most important thing that we see out of training camp, given the makeup of the team overall.
Well, I'm going to pop up the depth chart, Arled's depth chart. We'll go over that. And as we do, let's take a look at what we're really dealing with. Like you said, the biggest battle is probably an entire offense or even defense, like you said, is on the offensive line. Probably the two spots, the tackle position and the center position. And it would definitely be best for the Jets for Joe Tippmann to win that job. There's just no question about that. He needs to win that job. You don't draft someone in the second round to be your starting center if he can't beat out Connor McGovern the first year. Connor McGovern, fine center, but you're not going to spend a second-round draft pick to sit on the bench. That means he's not developing as fast as you like. So hopefully he wins that job. McGovern would be a nice backup if he remains on the team. Who knows? Maybe he doesn't if Tippmann proves that he's the man. And then you've got those tackle positions, which is going to be an all-out battle, which we're all looking forward to. And we just hope and keep our fingers crossed that Mekhi Becton stays healthy and wins that job.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of laid out the perfect scenario. I mean, granted, I'll use the term good news in air quotes, is that the Jets have options, right? Given that McGovern, as you mentioned, is there. They re-signed Dwayne Brown. There are some other options. But perfect world, right? Tippmann ends up to your center. Becton, who's lost some weight, first and foremost, stays healthy. Secondly, proves that he warrants having that job. And then if that does happen, you kind of have two major positions set And the biggest thing coming into the season clearly is the offensive line. Part of it is the need to keep Aaron Rodgers clean and give him a good pocket and to create some holes, and having guys who hopefully are set in their roles, cognizant of, we know their injuries and everything else that happens, but going into the season, having that offensive line that kind of has hopefully is a cohesive unit is probably first and foremost on what's on the Jets' mind at this point in time going into camp.
The depth is the best we've seen it in a very long time on the offensive line. Hopefully, the depth will not be something the Jets will need to take advantage of, but it's there and it needs to be there with the injury possibilities, and hopefully that won't be the case. Hopefully they'll be a lot healthier than they were last year, but it's nice to see that not just that they bring in the Schweitzers and the Billy Turners of the world, or even, of course, re-sign the big one, re-sign Dwayne Brown, but also just the development of some of the younger players is going to be interesting, especially on the outside with Max Mitchell coming back after a surprisingly decent rookie campaign until he left with the health issues. And then, of course, the rookie Carter Warren, this year's fourth-round draft pick. So those are definitely developments that, along with Tittman, those are the three young linemen. I mean, Becton is the given, but those are three young linemen we're going to keep an eye on and hope they develop during camp.
Yeah, and the good news also, as we saw last year before he got hurt, is Vera Tucker was as good as advertised, and B, I wouldn't say almost as important, but fairly important. He showed the ability to move to different positions if you needed him, right? He's not necessarily locked in to any one area, though you'd love to have him be able to be set at a specific position.
Oh, yeah.
Which then means you don't have issues going on everywhere else on the offensive line.
Absolutely. He's got the most talent on the line right now. And unless, of course, Becton becomes the guy that we all hope that he can, but that could be a really strong right side of the line if Becton does. And that's the other thing. I don't really care. I don't think any Jet fan cares whether or not Becton plays right or left tackle, because eventually, as long as he's healthy, he'll move over to the left tackle position over time. But that could be a heck of a right side if Becton plays there along with Vera Tucker in year one. But either way, again, like we always say, saying every year at this time, it's all about staying healthy and all that other stuff at camp. And is it nice to have those kind of wins like last year when the Chris Drevelers of the world, give the team something to be cheery about? Yes, but as you can see, once the regular season starts, it doesn't matter what happens as far as those types of wins at the end of the preseason. That's for the end of the roster kids. That's what it's for. It's nice to see the videos, after the games, if they pull out those wins and they're all cheery and fun, and that's great. But Jet fans, that's for the players. That's for the team.
We
it's
have
not for
higher
us.
aspirations.
Yeah,
we have higher aspirations, right? The acquisition of Rodgers raised the bar substantively, right? I mean, that's kind of where they are right now. Those last year were nice, right? And you obviously the questions with Zach Wilson last year, which I guess were to a certain extent answered because he proved that he wasn't necessarily ready for prime time. But now you have Aaron Rodgers has raised the bar, right? You have much higher expectation and aspirations this year that if they don't get met, the disappointment level becomes a lot higher. And clearly, Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, I wouldn't say they have, targets on their back, but if things go off the rails a little bit, it's going to get a little bit more heat under their feet right now based upon what we expected coming into the season.
Also on offense, we have to take a look at that running back position because we've got Breece Hall coming back from injury. So we'll see. I mean, everything from what they're saying, Breece is healthy. He's way ahead of schedule, and all that's great to hear. We've just got to keep our fingers crossed for this entire season that he does not have another injury, because anything, that could happen. Running backs, they can get serious injuries nowadays early in their career, and then it just never happens again. That's what we're hoping for Breece Hall, because another injury and all of a sudden your career could be in big jeopardy. But Abanikanda was as we talked about after the draft, was a really nice pickup. And that is like an insurance policy So it'll be nice to see how he performs in camp. And it'll also be nice to see a couple of the other players. I mean, Michael Carter has to get off to psychologically, a good start. But I'm also interested in even like a player like Travis Dye. He's not going to make the team unless there's an injury at running back, but he had a very productive college football career, very good in the locker room, and hopefully he'll earn his spot on the practice squad. So, yeah, even the running back position is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key, as you mentioned, is Hall. I mean, we saw how good he was last year. But I will say Zonovan Knight, in my opinion, Bam Knight did a nice job once he got in, be able to make some positive gains. Decent guy out of the backfield, obviously. Michael Carter's still there, but of the ilk that's sitting there at running back, clearly we know how good Breece Hall can be, and he is a guy that will take a lot of pressure off of Aaron Rodgers in the passing game if he's back and if he's as healthy and as productive as he was last year before he was injured.
Yeah, look, as far as I'm concerned, Zonovan Knight's. I think the Jets are in much better shape if Zonovan Knight doesn't touch the ball much this year.
Yeah,
Nice player,
agreed.
good to have on the bottom of the bench. If you have a bunch of injuries, the type of running back you want there. If you have to go to your number 3 or number 4 back, that that hey, the kid's got some juice. Maybe he can actually produce for you. But that means there's injuries, and that's something that. But again, I like the depth of the running back position, and to have Zonovan Knight sitting there as your number 4, potentially as your number 4 running back is a good deal. So, wide receivers, a lot of movement here. Of course, bringing in a couple of Aaron Rodgers boys, so I'm sure they know what they're doing. They getting familiar. It's not going to be that big of a deal for Lazard or Cobb. What's going to be interesting is because it looks like Corey Davis has made it. Looks like he's going to make the team. He's not going to get cut. No cap casualty, anything like that. So now we got to just hope that Corey can stay healthy, because that's the deal with Corey. That's the reason why I think Jet fans are a little bit surprised he made it, because it's we're not asking him to be ultra productive, because the Jets quarterback position has been all that great, but he has to stay healthy. But I think it's important with Hardman coming back from an injury, and here with the Jets for the first preseason, very important to see that he acclimates himself well to the team. And of course, the big one is without a doubt Denzel Mims. This is really going, because Denzel has got to now, it's another year removed from injuries and off the field issues. So he's got a complete year under his belt, year and a half of nothing going wrong off the field. And this now with Aaron Rodgers about to throw the football to him, there's no quarterback excuses either. So he's going to have a really impressive showing. First of all, to make the team, to solidify the fact that he can make the team, because he could be a trade option for the Jets if they are completely stocked and someone wants to offer the Jets a pretty good draft pick for Mims and he showcases himself well. So even just to showcase himself well for a potential trade, but more importantly, I want to see him play well, because I still think he's still young enough, just like Becton, the same draft class, to prove that he can still make himself a player in this league and for the Jets.
Yeah, well, as you named, right? The one guy you didn't mention, obviously, is Garrett Wilson, who we know how good he is. But you talked about Wilson, Lazard, Cobb, Mims, Hardman, Davis. I mean, that's 6 guys right there. You don't know whether or not the Jets will keep 6 wide receivers. I mean, in the past, I'm not sure if they've kept 6.
Oh, yeah, they'll definitely keep 6.
Been 5 or 6, but I think they'll get right with DeAndre Hopkins signing today with Tennessee, right? A 2-year deal. I mean, clearly that's no longer on the table. There'd been obviously some talk and rumors and whispers
that was ridiculous. That's like the Dalvin Cook rumors. I mean, what are we now? So, all of a sudden, we're the team that just signs like all these veterans to join the club. I mean, that's just ridiculous. These rumors, Hopkins and Cook. So, come on.
I mean, what we probably see as those 6 should be the guys. Lazard and Cobb were imported for 2 reasons. One, I think Lazard more than Cobb, because I think Lazard is the more productive one, clearly, of the 2. But they both enable the other remaining wide receivers and on the other part of the team to have somebody who's gone through the offense, who can give them the nuances and accelerate the learning curve associated with learning the offense. And look, I think both of us are expecting Garrett Wilson to, I'm not going to say take a Devontae Adams type leap, because I think that would be an unfair comparison, just what Adams is. But I think Rodgers is viewing him as being his Devontae Adams type
Sure.
on this team to be clearly that primary guy that we saw last year, but even taking another step forward in this sophomore season.
Well, I mean, I have no problem with feeling that. I mean, I don't know what kind of goals they have or he has, but as a fan, sure. I mean, the way he's played, the way they talk about him, I don't think there's any question Garrett Wilson could be just as productive and just as talented. It's a matter of whether he
I'm just
gets it
saying
done
that's a
or not, but
lot.
I'm not going to put the pressure on him. Let's just put it
Right.
that way. But I
Right.
think it's there. I think it's attainable. So, and then Jason Brownlee, he would be the most interesting out of the rest of that receiver core. There are a couple of players there to keep an eye on, but Brownlee's the probably the top wild card. He's the guy that could get Mims traded. If Mims plays well and Brownlee plays well, and the Jets feel like they're willing to, hey, let's just move on from Mims. Brownlee can. We don't want to lose this kid or for whatever reason, and they're that confident that could be how that scenario could take place. But either way, I would expect Jason Brownlee to at least make the practice squad if the Jets keep those starting six that I think they will.
Yeah, I mean, I would think Brownlee goes probably into camp as one of the favorites, but as we know, right, we always see guys who come out of the woodwork in camp. And as we haven't talked about yet with Hard Knocks this year, they will be more than happy to find guys that they can make into a story that may not necessarily be a story originally. And they will be more than happy to highlight those individuals as camp goes on, because as we get into the defense relatively shortly, one major storyline that you and I both know would have been the primary storyline got basically X'd out this week based on the recent events.
Yeah. And I don't even think we touched up on that on the air. We were talking about it off the air as far as HBO. So that is a huge deal that we're going to get into in just a little bit. Absolutely. And I guess I tell you what, one more on offense, and that's tight end, and then we can get into the HBO and the defense, and that is the development of Jeremy Rucker. So we know that he had the injury situation last year. It's very tough for first year tight ends to begin with. I think there are a lot of people that are just forgetting about Jeremy Rucker, and they shouldn't. And I think the coaching staff is still very high on him. He looked like, even in his very limited playing time at the end of last season, that what you like about Rucker is he's an all-around tight end. He's a guy that can play just about any down that you need a kid like that, a tight end, to play. And that's the future. Now, Kuntz being a seventh rounder, I know there's a lot of people, of course, with his dimensions. There's a lot to be excited about. But to me, when you're a seventh round draft pick still, that's just a bonus. Of course, the future of the Jets 3 years from now, if we're lucky, would be Ruckert and Kuntz. That would be your top two. But Ruckert is the guy. He's the guy to really keep an eye on. And I wouldn't even forget about Kenny Yeboah, because I liked what we saw from him when he got a little bit of a chance to play. So he's going to have something to say, especially if there's an injury at tight end. But I am really looking forward to, I want Ruckert to just really step up and push for playing time from Azuma and Conklin.
Yeah, I mean, last year I think we all had high hopes for him, but he clearly injuries took away from what we thought might be. Kuntz is most certainly a project. Projectables in terms of body type, clearly, he fits the perfect tight end. Rucker, he has the local flavor, which most certainly helps the storyline, right? I mean, that's one of those things that as we talk about for Hard Knocks, they love local storylines. So he could be one of those that's a local storyline. But I think both of us were most certainly expecting more out of him last year. I wouldn't call it a disappointment because of his injuries.
Sure.
But they did have two veteran tight ends who were okay, not great. But Rucker is a guy who, from a talent-based perspective, has a much higher level that he can get to than the two guys that are there now. And the opportunity exists for him to take a major step forward, presuming he's healthy and takes what he learned last year to go forward.
Yeah, even though they're not old, Azuma and Conklin, because their talent is their talent. We know what their talent is. We know what their ceiling is. We've seen it. So it's just a matter of they're still kind of really placeholders. They're good placeholders. They might even be re-signed when their contracts are over here, but they're not. If we're projecting 2 to 3 years down the road as a number one legitimate, really good option at tight end, that's not those guys. That's what we're hoping Rucker can become. And again, hopefully this is the beginning. And of course, quarterback. We know how big a circus that's going to be. It should be interesting to say the least. And it all starts in a few days. We're recording this on Sunday. Zach Wilson also. Look, we know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. We know what everything about what Aaron Rodgers is, and if Jet fans aren't familiar as much, well, they'll see. But for Zach, for that quarterback position, and we've talked about it all off season, what a big deal this was for Zach Wilson to get Aaron Rodgers in that building, and how this could be the main formula for the franchise to not win for a couple of years and have Aaron Rodgers leave, even if the Jets somehow miraculously win a Super Bowl. And then he leaves, and, well, look what happened to the Broncos when Manning left. Look what happened to Brady last year. Or look what's going to happen to them. Look what happened to him last year. It's almost like he wasn't even there. And you look at their options now and how scary the Buck fans are. That's not what I want. That's not what Jet fans should be looking at or hoping for, of course. I know there are a lot of anti-Zach Wilson fans from what happened last year. Well, if they were watching our shows, they should have known better that Zach was going to be back. We told them all along that he was going to be back, that all this Mike White crap from last year wasn't going to last. So Zach's back. He's the guy they still have hope for, and that is the only way, the best way. I'm not saying the Jets can't bring in another veteran or find another rookie, but this is going to be the best way to have a smooth transition. So when Aaron Rodgers leaves, the Jets can still win and have a quarterback that's capable of playing at a high level. Now, this is the beginning for Zach Wilson, showing that he's got that type of ability.
Well, I mean, it's now up to him, right? We saw snippets at time last year, but most certainly not enough consistency from him. I think we both had high hopes, but also recognize that there were flaws and lots of flaws. Part of it is, I will say, he's been humbled. Right? I don't think he was necessarily too big for his britches, but he clearly got humbled. He has the perfect person to learn from, although Rodgers has got his own warts and flaws, as we've seen from dealing with the media and some other stuff. But from a talent-based perspective and somebody who seems willing to teach him, he's the perfect person to learn from, right? There's no pressure on him. I think we both think that Rodgers is not a one-and-done type of player, and I think we're looking at least 2 years. I know Boomer Esiason, I think, said he thought maybe even 3, but
sure.
But that's going to depend on what happens over the next year or two, and if they have success, he may decide to step away based upon that success, or the success may keep him around for another year or two. Part of that is going to be, Wilson is only 2 years into this contract. We don't have to worry about the 5th-year option for several more years, but at least has this year to learn from Wilson and from Rodgers and see what he can glean and whether or not he picks up what he needs to learn to be able to take that and be able to potentially be the quarterback of the team down the road. But that's well down the road as of right now.
Well, don't we have, I think that decision does have to be made next year, I believe. On
Right,
Zach.
right. We have another year. Right. You have
So
to
what?
do it before the 4th year.
And look, it's possible Aaron Rodgers. It happened last year, even though it was because of what was it last year? Didn't Aaron Rodgers miss a game or two last year? I forget what it was. What happened?
Yeah, he got hurt during a game that Love I know came in.
He missed that Kansas City game. I forget why.
But I know that Love came in during one game for him.
Yeah, he missed a whole Kansas City game. I don't remember why. I think it might have had something to do with. I don't know. I don't know if it had something to do with. Was it still a COVID thing for him?
I don't remember top of that.
Whatever.
I can look while we're talking.
But he was.
But
he
I know
didn't
that
play.
Love came in and it definitely played well during part of one game, which is what gave them some hope when a lot of this decision making was being made from the Green Bay side.
So now, just understanding that could happen again. That could happen. Aaron could miss a game this year for any stupid reason, and if that does happen, Zach must take advantage of that possibility, because that's going to be his best way of getting that 5th-year option next offseason. Because if he doesn't play at all, then it's going to be a wild card. Who knows how the Jets are going to handle that? That'll be interesting. But we all hope Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. We hope he doesn't miss any time. But hey, you know what? It's not the worst thing in the world for him to miss a game this year, because I think it'd actually be a good thing. Miss a game. Let's see. Midway through the season, Jets will be over 500 if he does. Let's hope. And then let's see what Zach can do for a game.
I'm not going there yet.
On defense, so movement, and one of the deals was Chuck Clark, and it was interesting because as soon as they signed Adrian Amos, like it was like a couple days later, the Clark news came out, and I was like, well, that's why they signed Adrian Amos. Because I was like, when they signed Amos, I was like, what? Wow, okay, great. I mean, I didn't think they needed another safety. I figured Amos could go somewhere else and start somewhere else. But then it became apparent that was the reason, and it could wind up being a blessing because Amos has had better seasons than Clark has had. Now, he hasn't played well last year. He didn't play well last year, but you know what? It's a new team, new chance. Anything's possible. New system. He's got the talent, and we'll see if that winds up working in the Jets' favor. But right now, if we look at it, I think that would be the one position right now on the team, the entire team, that can't afford injuries would be the secondary. Because once you get past that top 5, it gets a little, unnerving. Like, what happens if someone misses an extended period of time? So I still wonder, and this is again maybe a Denzel Mims trade or another type of move. I can definitely see them bring in another corner or a safety or just a general DB than I'm going to see Dalvin Cook or Hopkins. So I would think if they make one move in the offseason to bring in another veteran, I think it's for the secondary.
Yeah,
not to start,
that.
but for the bench,
for the reserve Clark. I mean, I like Amos, but I happen to like Clark even more. I was really excited that they got him. Honestly, the one thing I would love to see them do, and I do still think it's on the table, is Quan Alexander coming back. He hasn't signed anywhere yet. I do think it would most certainly help their linebacker depth substantially.
Yeah, but you see,
if
that happens though, Jan, what that says is the young guys aren't good enough, and I don't want that to happen. Depth. I don't want to see Quan Alexander.
Sherwood is getting his chance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right, but Alexander has not signed yet, right? So the opportunity or the possibility still exists. I think all of us expected him to have been signed somewhere. Look, they lost Sheldon Rankins on the defensive line. We both think that's a decent loss. I think they've made up for it. But Rankins was really good last year. I don't think people, unless you look behind the numbers, you don't realize just how good he really was last year on that defensive line. Look, he parlayed his time in New York into a really, really, really good contract. But you're going to lose guys, right? It's the nature of the beast.
Aren't you concerned with the depth in the secondary?
Right now, it's the depth. I agree with you. I don't know. Losing Clark, like you'd love to have Clark and Amos.
Sure.
Clearly, that would be the optimal. Clark is now pretty much gone for the year with the ACL tear. Now they getting Amos most certainly helped. The ironic part at the time, everybody's like, oh, there we go with the Green Bay pipeline all over again. But you got a guy who was productive, especially his first couple of years, whose game has leveled off a little bit, but maybe in the Jets system, it'll be a better fit for him in terms of talent base.
But the bench, again, you're talking about right now, their number one corner off the bench could be Bryce Hall, and we have no idea what's going through his head after what happened last year, or rookie.
Yep.
600 draft pick. Or Guidry's back, so we have no idea how he's going to fit into the role. And at safety, the first guy off the bench could end up being Ashton Davis again. So now maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's Ashton Davis. I mean, this is it for Ashton Davis, by the way. I mean, he either puts up or he's gone. So, but then as you were talking about linebacker, again, I know their fans saying just like you about Quan and bringing him in, but I don't think it's not surprising that he hasn't signed yet. I think everybody knows what's going on. The Jets are going to give Sherwood especially a little time in camp to find out if they don't need Quan Alexander. That's what it is. And if something happens and he doesn't prove that he can be the guy, you'll see Quan Alexander signed, or if there's an injury. But the rest of that unit, look, you do have Zaire Barnes, so I hope that Barnes and Sherwood and maybe even Surratt, Najruddin, I hope one young lineman, just one, steps up, so the Jets don't need Quan Alexander. That's what I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think Barnes, we both view him as a 2-down linebacker. I think the question is going to be with him in the pass coverage, which is something from a lack of a speed perspective. Though, look, he's got talent. He showed in college he's got the talent. Whether or not he parlays that into a full-time role or somebody who can be a platoon guy remains to be seen. I mean, look, Ulbrich is a pretty darn good linebacker coach and a coach overall, in my opinion. Guy who played linebacker at the highest level. So I'm if Barnes was a guy that I'm not sure if he pushed for him, but if Ulbrich did, let's say, push for him, that gives me a little bit more confidence because I trust Ulbrich because, as you know, as a Niners fan, I watched Ulbrich a whole heck of a lot when he was there. So I look, Alexander is sitting there. Whether or not they bring him in, I think we both agreed that he would improve the talent base on the defense. Whether or not they're at the position where they want to necessarily take time away from the younger guys remains to be seen. But if you have higher aspirations, which is what they do, sometimes you have to say, you know what, we're going to sacrifice the long-term pain for short-term gain by bringing in a guy who's a veteran and slotting him into the spot because he's a better fit now, as opposed to getting those guys the experience for down the road.
Look, this is not about experience in my book for Jamie and Sherwood. This is about, can you start, can you play, and can you be a productive linebacker? Because just like you said, this isn't the Jets from even last year or 2 years ago when he was here. This is a completely different situation. This is, can you be productive? Can you be better than Quan Alexander? If you can't be better than Quan Alexander, then we'll go sign Quan Alexander. That's what this is. Yeah. So this is not about giving him time and let's see if he can. No, this is not that type of year. So they like Sherwood. I think there's a chance that he could be better than Quan Alexander. I hope so. Cause look, Quan Alexander's a nice player, but why do you think he's been around the league in 500 teams? Because he's just a player. I mean, that's all he is. And so I hope Sherwood's more than that or equal to that at the worst, or one of these other guys like Zaire Barnes. We conclude with the defensive line and the one position on the entire team that really has depth as much as you'd like. And it all starts with the good news of getting Quinnen in and not having to deal with any of that potential off the field stuff.
You didn't want to see them go to Roscoe Diner like they did with Revis years ago and have to worry about signing him? I mean,
no.
Hard Knocks was basically chomping at the bit for that one.
No. And I definitely think if you look at how his contract was structured, how perfectly it was structured to be the second behind Donald in just about every little dollar, it's almost like I think, you just had to believe that the Jets knew exactly what they were doing. And I think they just figured, well, there's no rush for this. We're going to sign him. Maybe the agent will give. And if he doesn't, well, we know where we're going to put him. And it's just no way that was not going to get done. So he's now in, and that's great to see. Now he needs to just continue to play as good as he played last year. And as you mentioned, you bring in Woods and Jefferson from Seattle to make up for the loss of Rankins. And then the rest of it is pretty suspect because we said that at the draft. That would be nice to get a young player in the middle to make up for the veterans that they have because they just don't have that player. But let's remember, John Franco Myers is basically more of an interior guy than an edge guy. So the interior is fine, and now what we really need to see in camp in the preseason, we need to see what Carl Lawson looked like before his injury during camp 2 years ago. We need to see Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens, and of course the rookie Will McDonald, but especially Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens now step up. They're not rookies anymore. They need to be more than just good. because they were good last year as rookies, but now they need to be really good. Now they need to show that, especially with Johnson as a first-round draft pick, now they need to show that they're really going to help the team and the defense, because that was the one thing that hurt them last year. They didn't get as many sacks or pressures as they should have, and that's what also really hurt their ability to get turnovers.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's ironic. I know Johnson on Twitter, there were some people saying, oh, that, they're concerned he's going to be a bust. And this, I'm like, the guy just played a handful of snaps. Yeah. People were concerned last year. People were concerned. People
about
on
Jermaine
Twitter
Johnson?
all over Johnson this year. Yep. All over Jermaine. I'm like, why are you all over Jermaine Johnson already? Your guys are ridiculous here. The guy didn't see a ton of snaps last year. I'm not quite sure what you're expecting, but
Yeah.
I do think Huff is going to be a key portion. I think he earned to see additional snaps this year. So if Lawson doesn't rebound, and I think both of us are clearly hoping that that's the case, that we see the Lawson that was closer to 2 years ago, I do think that it's going to be Huff who's going to be the primary beneficiary, because he's shown he can definitely get after the passer, and he definitely has that burst to create opportunities for himself or for others. And Franklin Myers being on the interior is most certainly much more beneficial from him. He's not an exterior lineman. He's an interior lineman, but there is depth. I mean, losing Rankins most certainly hurts. I do think more so than we might think, but I do think they've made up for it. Bringing in Woods was a nice move. Bringing in Jefferson was a nice move. They did augment the depth there in case of any injuries or anything else, but a lot of it still revolves and centralizes around Q being the guy that he was last year and continuing to be the guy that we think he can be moving forward. I mean, I know like some people were questioning the contract, not a lot, but a couple. I'm like, would you expect him to sign for? I mean, this was like Lawrence got 90 for 4. The bar was in the 22 to 24-ish range. They didn't like go, oh, we're getting him 35 million a year, right? They stayed within a relatively reasonable range as to where everybody else was, and they said, look, we know how valuable you are. We could have gone 490. We're going to make you 494 to be second behind Donald. We're showing how much we value you on the team. We're not eons above where everybody else is. We're in the range. We just may be slightly above where a couple of guys are by giving you the 94 before versus the 90 or the 92 or the 93. So this is, I think we all expected them to land. The good news, as I said, is no distractions in camp. Nope. No Hard Knocks. Basically just lost a major storyline, but he comes into camp as a happy guy as opposed to a guy who's basically going, why couldn't we have gotten this done sooner so I can be in camp on time?
Yeah. And as far as the camp players to keep an eye on, Alexander, the kid from Pitt, keep an eye on him. We haven't seen much of him. And of course, McDonald being the top draft pick. But other than that, it's not the same as it was the last few years. We're not going to be keeping an eye or hopeful or need to be hopeful on a lot of late round picks or free agents. We're a pretty stacked roster right now, and that's what you're looking for. So now, one last thing, and then we'll talk about Hard Knocks before we let you go, and that is special teams. Of course, Zerline coming back. Hopefully, a second year, he'll be even as good, if not better. And hopefully, Hardman can solidify the kicking game, and which he should, taking over, of course, for Berrios. The spot that intrigues me. This is going to be, I think, interesting. We heard the news about the kid from Buffalo who had a workout, and I guess everything went okay. It's just a workout. That's all it was. And there's still some legal stuff that needed to get done. As far as, even though from everything I've read, everything is looking like he's going to be cleared. And that everything is going to be fine. He's going to sign somewhere eventually. And when he does, he is going to have a tremendous career in the NFL. He's that talented. I do not want to see the Jets screwing this up, considering they brought him in and it's the only team to bring him in for a tryout. If they let him go somewhere else and go with Thomas Morstead, another old guy, which I'm sick of that crap with the kickers. At least Zerline proved that he can do something last year. So enough of the revolving kickers. We could have ourselves a legitimate all pro punter for the next 10 years, as long as he clears up in time and it works out timely. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, remember Bradley Mann was there, so they didn't have an old guy. They had a guy who they drafted. I didn't think Mann had a bad year. I do think the issues, obviously, the Patriots game with the lack of directional kicking, and I put that as much on the special teams coach as I do on him in terms of what the plan was. The bigger issue, obviously, was the lack of touchbacks or enough touchbacks and getting themselves out of dangerous situations. Though his overall gross was nice, the net was not. Morstead is a nice kicker, but the hope, as you said, is presuming he gets cleared, and that's the first hurdle to tackle. He's gone past one hurdle that he's not going to be charged now, or it looks like he won't be charged at all. Then it's the getting cleared. The hope is that Douglas spoke to him and said, "Look, once everything gets cleared, we do want to sign you. We are just waiting until the last little I's are dotted and T's are crossed associated with all the legalities before we bring you into camp." That is the hope.
I'm fine with that.
Because as you said, he's immensely talented. I mean, the leg is unbelievable. Now, there's a lot more to kicking in the NFL than just a leg, right? It's the directional kicking. It's the whole 9 yards associated with it. It's the ability for touchbacks. It's all of that, which Mann had a great leg. He lacks some of the other nuances, which is what hurt them last year, right? Morstead gives you that veteran who knows the game, right? And knows what needs to get done.
Yeah, Morstead's an upgrade over Mann.
But he lacks the upside potential
without a question,
of what this guy potentially could give you.
Yes. So I just hope that works out. And then wrapping up, and that is, of course, with Hard Knocks coming in, because I'm glad I kind of caught it at the right time, because as I mentioned to you, we were texting about it, because I don't have HBO or any way to get it. Any way to have it, like, as part of my other streaming platforms. So, all right, I'm going to have to pay $15 a month for whatever, a couple of months, whatever. Okay, I guess I'll do that. So it just so happened when I found out the very day, I had like 2 or 3 hours left. They had this deal going on where you get like the first 2 months for half price. I was like, hey, great, I can cancel at any time. So now instead of spending $15 or $16, I can spend $7 or $8 a month, and then I can cancel it for a couple of months. So that worked out. But we all know why they chose the Jets, and it was gonna happen, and that's the reason it was gonna happen, because I even know, because I did it, and that's how many Jet fans are gonna do it that don't have HBO, and that's how many just general football fans who are usually just like the series that only sign up maybe at this time of year. I can imagine that they're going to have more signups at this time of the year than maybe ever before, because of just what this is going to mean for that series.
No, look, when Rodgers got there, I think we both kind of knew that this was going to be the likelihood. I am not a huge fan of them being on Hard Knocks. It doesn't mean that much to me. Look, I'm in New York, so I get all the news that I really need to from
we already
here.
know what that's like. Yeah.
Right. So, again, there's enough newspapers, enough media information that comes out here. We know Hard Knocks is selling a story. The Jets are still going to be doing that One Jets Drive, which is their weekly update also, that's going to be on Mondays. Maybe looking at things at a slightly different level or different bodies of who they're focusing on. Hard Knocks will be Tuesdays, right? So it'll be Monday will be X, and then it'll be interesting to see Tuesday what Hard Knocks focuses on, because the Jets are still going to be doing their kind of documentary type reporting anyway on Mondays. And, last time it was a lot of behind the scenes stuff. It was more so because of Revis and everything else. Now it's Rodgers is most certainly a completely different personality. Rex was bombastic, and that's what they were selling last time. Rodgers, I wouldn't say is bombastic, but certainly sells a different kind of a story based upon his background and his history and a lot of things that's gone on with him and his family on the field, his love life off the field. All of that is going to be wrapped up as part of the story, and his first year in New York, which is the real main part why they're having him on.
Yeah. What other stories do you think they're going to go after?
Well,
besides the obvious ones?
Q most certainly would have been one of them, right?
Yes.
I do think Mekhi Becton's going to be another one.
That would be a good one.
Coming back from the injury, not signed for a 5th year, whether or not it's going to be the offensive lineman. I think it's going to be the new offensive coordinator. Most certainly has to be something they're focused on, the new offense being brought on board, irrespective of Rodgers, right? With Lazard and Cobb and
sure.
Amos there is another one.
What do
It's
you want to see as a fan, knowing that they're going to spend extra time on some of a few players? Which players that are not the obvious ones would you want to see them spending extra time on?
Well, I think the obvious is most certainly the health status of Hall, right? I think that's from a interest level. Hall and Becton are the two guys
And
from a
Vera
health
Tucker.
perspective,
Okay.
right? And Vera Tucker also in terms of the offensive line for Vera Tucker and Becton. Hall in terms of his importance in the offense. I think it's the indoctrination and incorporation of the Green Bay offense and what that's going to mean. I think it's going to be the Sala and the other piece of the puzzle, and Douglas and Woody Johnson and the fan base as a whole. I do think is going to be something they end up focusing on. With they're going to speak to Namath, right? You almost can
I
tell
know.
they're going to somehow end up speaking to Namath about what Rodgers mean and what's the
Yeah.
impact of Rodgers being there in the last time that they won the Super Bowl. And it's also Rodgers' legacy, right? Look, I know you don't love Beningo, I don't love him either, but he said, look, Rodgers is at X level now. If he somehow, and I don't use the term miraculously, leads the Jets to a Super Bowl win, his status goes from one level to a whole nother level, just given how long it's been and the fact that it'll be his second Super Bowl, right? So for him, from a legacy perspective, as weird as it sounds, that can end up taking him past Favre because he'll have the second Super Bowl on a franchise that hasn't won anything in 55
Sure.
years. Right.
Oh,
So I think that's going
absolutely.
to be a major selling
By the
point
way,
that they
let's
have.
remember Benigno was a Derek Carr guy. So
Yeah, I know. I'm look, I do. So I think those are going to be some of the storylines. I mean, I'm assuming
okay.
they'll find guys on defense to focus on. I could see Lawson a little bit coming back from his injury.
I'd like to see
CJ
Sherwood.
Mosley. They're definitely going to focus on Gardner. I mean, there's Gardner and
Oh
Reed,
yeah.
especially Gardner. It's going to be a major focus of Hard
Yeah.
Knocks.
Yeah. You would think Gardner. I don't want
And
to see
and
CJ
and if the
Mosley.
punter
I don't
and if
want
the
to see
punter
Carl
comes in,
Lawson. I've seen
yep.
enough of those guys. I
But
don't
again,
want to
if the
see any
punter
more of it.
comes into camp, if they do sign the punter, that's going to be a
Oh
storyline
yes.
also.
There you go. That's a good one. With his with his background,
Yep.
that could be huge. So yeah, but yeah, I want to see them. Of course, the rookies. I'd like to see as much of the rookies as I can. Maybe the center battle would be nice to keep an eye on. But other than that, again, maybe Sherwood. I'd like to
I do think
see
they'll focus on the tight end because he's a local kid, right? I do think they'll definitely sell that
Ruckert.
story.
Yes,
So I think
that'd
Ruckert
be
will be
good.
because of the local angle will be
Yep,
something most certainly they focus on as well.
that'll be a good one. So, but again, that's starting. When do they usually come up with their first show? Do you know?
Well, the first game is the third. The first game is the third
The Hall of Fame
of
game?
August. They open camp on the 19th, so maybe right before, right after the game. I have to see when the first Hard Knock show is. I can take a quick
Yeah,
look
I don't.
before we kind
I
of
haven't
sign off
watched
here.
that. I think the last time I watched it was when the Jets were on. So
Yeah, I mean, I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I mean, I'll turn on for a couple of minutes and then turn it off, and then
yeah, I just think that's
supposedly what I'm reading here is they think the first one will be August 8th, which will be right after the Hall of Fame game.
so that gives them
Right
about
after the Hall of Fame game.
gives them several days to use the film
Yep.
from the game. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So now we will be on talking Jets football a lot more this year. Of course, Jan is going to be on as often as he can. He has a regular busy schedule. And we had Mr. Matt O'Leary came on. He's got a really good Jet channel, so you know about that. So check that out. We'll get him on as much as I can without bothering him too much. And then whenever possible, I'll come on and do reports, even solo, even if they're just short 5-minute kind of deals. So we're going to talk Jets football a ton this season, and this is just the beginning on the Arlad's Football Network. So it's going to be a great year, and looking forward to it. And fingers crossed. I mean, I already put in my YouTube. I did that. If you pay now, you get $100 off deal. So I already did that $100 off YouTube deal about 6 weeks ago. So I'm all set. The only thing I haven't figured out yet is whether or not I don't think you can. I don't think you can record off of YouTube. Can you?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I haven't done it yet. I haven't decided yet if I'm doing it. I mean, for me,
Yeah, you're
being in New
local.
York, I'm getting the Jet games anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little easier for me. It's the matter of I've had the DirecTV package for 20 something years, and it came with it, and found myself not using it as much as I probably should have. So I wouldn't call it a waste, but I was spending a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
The cost benefit ratio
That
wasn't
doesn't, yeah.
necessarily equating to one another based upon the amount that I used it
I
necessarily.
hear you. I mean, we got a busy schedule.
On
Unless
Direct
you're
TV, I'll get the Red Zone channel. I think still on Direct TV anyway. So
okay, yeah. So yeah, it's expensive. It is, but you're local, so you got that break.
Yep.
I have to, and so all right. Anyway, that's still 2 months away. We got a long off season, a training camp and preseason, all that stuff to go, but it's here. We're just a few days away from it kicking off, so we're gonna really have fun with this. Jan, I appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll get you on soon to talk hockey again. That'd be nice.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. So that'll wrap it up. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget, like the video if you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe as well. I've already have the Giants with Ryan Dunleavy, Mark Carman, who does the Chicago radio for the Bears, interviewed him. So that's already with this. So I already got 3 of these in the can. We'll be posting these in the next few days, and we got many more to come. So it's going to be a big season here on the RLS Football Network on Prime Sports Network. For Jan Levine, I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you guys next time.